All right, let's talk about immersion. What immersion is and what it isn't, and if it works or not. Long story short, immersion does work, but it only works if you do it right, and I can guarantee that 99% of you are not doing it right. I have personally never done immersion the right way because it's difficult. Not really difficult, it's just time consuming. Immersion doesn't mean moving to the country and living there. If you move to Latin America but you work online in English and you spend most of your time online in English and you watch content online in English and you mostly hang out with other expats, what's the immersion there? Immersion means living in the language. You only read and watch and listen to the language and you only interact in the language. And it's only achievable in very few cases. If you move to the country by yourself and try to get a job there without really speaking the language and they hire you and then you have to survive in the new language and you try to speak only the language and then when you on your own at home you also just try to watch TV all day in the language, that would be immersion. I've never done it, honestly. Even when I was living abroad, I was never committed enough to do that. Does it work? Yeah, of course it does. But for 99% of you, of us, because I include myself, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's simply not practical. So if you think you're doing immersion, think again. Start thinking, instead of thinking you're doing immersion by living in the country, start thinking in hours spent in contact with the language. How many hours a day are you spending reading, listening to, watching, or interacting in the language? And in many cases, even if you live in the country, if you work in English online, and if you spend most of your time online, social media, YouTube, whatever, watching shows, mostly in your language, how much time are you spending in contact with the target language? Probably less than 2 hours a day, which 2 hours is good, but most of you won't even get an hour a day of contact with the language. You have to make it happen, especially if you're working online. So if you moving abroad, and you know why I'm playing with this pen so much. If you're moving abroad and if you trying to learn the language, it doesn't matter if it's Spanish in Latin America or whatever, Polish in Poland, whatever it is. Try to spend as much time as possible in contact with the language. So start watching stuff, mostly watching and reading, because interacting with people is going to be very difficult and not very effective as a way to learn in the beginning. Because if you can't say much, if you don't understand anything, you learn a few words here and there, but that's it. If you want to learn by immersion, start by consuming insane amounts of content. Yeah, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of content, reading, listening, watching. That is immersion. But again, if you're working online in English, immersion is already impossible. You need to be, because you're already spending most of your time in English. So that's not real immersion. But again, if you spend all of your free time in the target language, that's a pretty effective pseudo immersion that you're doing, although it's not full immersion. Yeah, full immersion would be to basically, what do those nerds call? All Japanese all the time, or something like that. Those guys who learn in Japanese, which I wouldn't do myself. I hate the idea of just having to listen to a language that I don't understand all day. I can do it for a couple hours when I go for a run, but after after a certain point, it's just too much. So yeah, don't say you're learning by immersion. You probably aren't, unless you're super disciplined and committed. Well, if you are, great for you. I mean, happy for you. If you can spend 12 hours a day in the target language, you will very quickly learn it. So if you can achieve it, yeah, go for it. But most of you need a real learning plan, because hoping to learn by living in the country is just wishful thinking. It's not going to work unless you have a real learning plan, or unless you're doing real immersion, right? Anyway, see you later.